What is up, everybody? I'm NoLucksGiven here with your afternoon snap, and today I'm playing Negative Wong. I'll tell you how to play the deck if you've got a 2-cost card in your hand, plus Mr. Negative or Wong, you snap. It's pretty straightforward, and we get a nice hand to kick things off here, but I am playing this deck because today Nidavellir is the featured location, and this deck is pretty good with Nidavellir. Specifically, it's an Iron Man deck, and Iron Man is really good with today's featured location because Iron Man basically doubles the featured location, gives you plus 10 power for each card that is there, and typically is just enough by itself to win the location. So I knew I wanted to play Iron Man today, and I think that this is one of my favorite Iron Man decks. There's a lot of powerful things that this deck can do, and it can also take your opponent by surprise, which is always good in terms of getting some bonus cubes. There is some other synergy with this deck and the featured location, namely Shang-Chi, which is a card that a lot of players are playing today, and even though this deck doesn't always play Shang-Chi, I think that it can still fit into the deck well because it's cheaper with both Zabu and if you can flip it with Mr. Negative. So I think this is a good Shang-Chi deck, but it also kind of plays a bonus copy of Shang-Chi in Gambit, which isn't quite the same thing, Gambit being a lot more random, though I think with today's featured location, Gambit can do a very similar job because any card that Gambit happens to hit in the featured location is then going to give your opponent -5 power in that location and be pretty good for you. So we're going to get to see a lot of what this deck can do in this game. We're now playing Wong, and we are going to be doubling up on an Ironheart and on a Wolfsbane. So now we are winning in Nidavellir, and we're down by a decent amount in Monster Island, but my opponent has filled that location completely. So Shang-Chi could have won us in Monster Island, though we draw Shuri, another card that not every version of this deck is playing, but it can be pretty fun and allow you to do some pretty big plays. So from here, I think I want to throw the Iron Man into Nidavellir, and then I will probably just Shuri the Mystique. I could also use Mystique to copy Iron Man, but if I do that, then I'm not really getting any value out of this Shuri, so might as well just do it for fun. Either way, we win over in the Monster Island, so I wasn't really sweating it, and Iron Man should be able to clean up Nidavellir, despite the fact that my opponent is actually going to Shang-Chi us in that location. Iron Man is still just stronger. Even with only 3 cards, we are going to be able to take them. And there's nowhere for Captain Marvel to move, so we get the win. Again, we've got the 2-cost curve into a Mr. Negative, so a pretty clear snap. I play Psylocke into location number 3, hoping that it is Nidavellir, so that way we can start to get some additional power in that location, and then I'll just throw Mr. Negative over there on turn 3. One other thing I wanted to point out, as you could kind of see last game, most of my cards dodge Shang-Chi, even after they get +5 from Nidavellir, which I think is a nice additional bonus of this deck. Most of the cards are powerful because of their effects. Sometimes you do wind up pumping things up to be a little bit bigger, especially once you flip them with Mr. Negative, but for the most part, you don't have to worry about opposing Shang-Chi's when a lot of people are playing Shang-Chi today, so that's definitely a nice part of the deck. Turn 4, just going to wind up playing Zabu, nothing too crazy. My opponent throws a She-Hulk over there, and then we draw Iron Man, so we're already in a pretty good spot. I'm just going to play White Tiger in Nidavellir. I don't need to play this flipped Iron Man in Nidavellir. Instead, I'll just hang on to this for as long as I can, and the plan is to put the Mystique into Nidavellir, copying Iron Man, and then flipped Iron Man can win another location just basically by himself. 10 power plus whatever other power you put there. My opponent has a red skull for Nidavellir, but we're actually beating them there with just the what would normally only be 1 power with a Psylocke, a Mr. Negative, and a White Tiger. Plus, we've got some decent power to the other locations. We are losing all of the other locations, but like I said, that just allows you to play around Shang-Chi with a little bit more comfort here. We do get to dump our entire hand on the final turn. Shuri pumping up a flipped Mr. Negative for an insane amount of power, and my opponent's actually going to arrow that Iron Man over into, I might have said Mr. Negative, meant Iron Iron Man. Iron Man, Mr. Negative, we'll see now for 10 power plus doubling the power at the location, and then Mystique gets to easily flip Nidavellir in our favor. It looks close, but then it's going to double, and then we'll also reveal a Gambit here, and we could win all 3 locations. We're just going to win 2 though, but still a pretty decisive victory. This is a quick one, but it still brought up some interesting things that I wanted to talk about for Nidavellir today. We've got Plunder Castle and Mirror Dimension, which can either be another Nidavellir or potentially another Plunder Castle. My opponent running sort of a Darkhawk style deck, which I think is not really great today, giving your opponent Rocks and Widow's Bites, which are just cheap cards that you can then use in Nidavellir, I don't think is super great. But my opponent is kind of forced to retreat here because double Plunder Castle means that they aren't really able to play, and we're kind of restricted too. We'll only be able to play to Nidavellir this game, and I don't think that my opponent realized that, or maybe they wouldn't retreat. All that we did was play 1 rock that they gave us, so they maybe could have stayed in it for another second, but if they were to do so, we would have still won this game. Iron Man plus Mystique on Iron Man would have just been a ton of power in Nidavellir, and then we would have been able to win on differential. The reason I bring this up is that if you get any sort of location like this, Sanctum Sanctorum, where both players are unable to play and it comes down to differential, then just dropping both of your Iron Man and Mystique into Nidavellir is a surefire way to get the win. So there is one other thing that I wanted to talk about today, and that is the change with hot and featured locations. So typically, featured locations would be new locations around for 48 hours, and you'd be 40% to see them in any given game. Hot locations, that was on Sundays, would be returning locations that you'd be 60% to see in every game for a 24-hour period. And now they're kind of hedging the difference, in both hot and featured locations, they're just going to be one thing, and they're only going to be here for 24 hours, and you're going to be 50% to see them in any given game. So the question is, how do you want to build decks around that 50%? And I bring that up because with featured locations, I would typically just play a deck that I thought was good that could be even better if that featured location showed up. But with hot locations, I would go all in and build something crazy, just trying to exploit that location to the fullest. So where do we kind of fall? Well, for this deck, I'm just playing something that I think is good regardless of if the featured location shows up. And this game, I'm pretty sure, was up against a bot, but I still thought it was fun to showcase here. We've got Shuri, and we've got Sinister London and Kamartaj. No Wong, but we are still able to make crazy great use of this Shuri, activating it 3 times because it's lucky enough to get that into Kamartaj. So now we get to make an absolutely insanely large Iron Man and finish this game off. And I'm not even going to play anything on turn 5 here, just so that way my opponent can't Shang-Chi us. We don't keep priority or anything like that. And then we can just surprise them with an absolutely massive Iron Man plus Mystique on the final turn. So that should be a lot of fun, and we'll see exactly how that goes. Like I said, I think we're playing up against a bot, and we don't actually get to throw in the Mystique as well because that gets dragged out with Grand Central. My opponent snaps because they're a bot. It's a great way to grab extra cubes as well to have some huge surprising play like this. So we're going to get Iron Man that is doubled, so 8 tupled, so 10, 20, 40 power Iron Man twice. So pretty crazy. This should be a bunch of power. Plus we'll Gambit them and Wolfsbane them. And because Grand Central, we can fill that up with Psylocke. Everything is then going to respawn into Kamartaj and trigger an additional 2 times for a whole bunch of power on the final turn. Couldn't not include this game, even though by these plays it becomes pretty obvious we're playing up against a bot here. It is still a really sick one. So like I said, yeah, 40 power Iron Man, we're going to get that twice, and then we are going to Gambit my opponent 3 times, and then we'll have a huge Wolfsbane as well to finish it off. The next game we're going to look at is actually like also a pretty crazy game and not up against a bot. So I feel like that game is a lot of fun too. We'll take a look at that one next, but yeah, just didn't want to not include this one here. This game really has it all. We've got the Psylocke into Mr. Negative and Sinister London to kick us off. We also have Wong and we have Iron Man, though I would rather have the flipped Iron Man later. I still think that we've basically got everything that we could ever possibly ask for here. So I'm going to snap and I will jump ahead a little bit in this one just to see what's going on. We're going to throw out Psylocke, Mr. Negative. My opponent goes 0 into a double lizard, and we do see that Nidavellir is our third location. So on turn 4, I'm going to play Wong, and we're going to try to see how much use we can get out of all of this stuff. My opponent going to play a doubled up Shuri, so they're going to have a really, really big character, but we can Shang-Chi that, and we can Shang-Chi in Sinister London, so we've got a lot of different options here. On turn 5, I'll just drop Iron Man. I'll throw that into Sinister London. My opponent snaps, but I think that we are actually looking a lot better than they realize here. And like I said, that's part of the strength of this deck. You're going to pull out a ton of power to surprise your opponent on that final turn of the game. So Iron Man isn't actually even going to give us priority here. There's no way that Iron Man can give us priority, and Iron Man gets countered a little bit with Arrow, bringing us out of Sinister London. So we don't get to make full use of the Iron Man, but we should still be able to find a win with this one. So probably want to play Mystique here now to first copy Iron Man, though. There's a lot of different ways that we could play this game, but I think briefly about playing White Tiger into Nidavellir just to kind of control where my other cards might lie. I don't think it really winds up mattering too much. We're going to play Shang-Chi, and I kind of would like that Shang-Chi to have a chance at going into Nidavellir. Like I said, I don't really think it matters. I think we probably find the win here regardless. But if either Gambit or Shang-Chi or Mystique can get into Nidavellir, that's all great. And because we are copying 3 different things, White Tiger would actually eat up one of the copies of Gambit. So I'm not even going to play the White Tiger, just keep it in my hand, still had all these. We're going to drop that Mystique copying Iron Man. That's going to be enough to flip Nidavellir in our favor. And then Shang-Chi to blow up everything in Sinister London. We'll win that location as well. And we'll also be able to take over Kylan. Or Kiln, rather. We will actually wind up losing the Kiln, as Gambit never actually kills anything over in there, and then Gambit spawns in Nidavellir and takes out my opponent's other cards. But still, I thought a really, really fantastic game. In this game, I have to get a little bit creative. We've got Zabu plus Mr. Negative, so we're doing great. That's definitely enough to snap. But the other locations are kind of weird. We've got Luke's Bar. Mojo World is basically just like a different version of Nidavellir, where you want to put a bunch of stuff into that location, and you can win it later on with Shang-Chi and Gambit in some nice capacities. And location number 3 is Mindscape. So we're going to be swapping hands with my opponent for turn 6, which is going to make this game very interesting and pretty cool. You'll see what I mean by that in just a moment. But Mr. Fantastic is going to be the play for my opponent into Mojo World. So now they're winning into Luke's Bar, which definitely puts me in an awkward spot here. And I think on this turn, I'm going to wind up just dropping Wong and then trying to use Wong plus White Tiger to hopefully get a White Tiger into Luke's Bar, and then we can still win that location. So that's still not looking bad for me if we can get White Tiger to land there, and we've got pretty decent odds considering we'll have 2 White Tigers off of the Wong. But my opponent plays Moon Knight, discarding my White Tiger. So we're not going to be able to do that, and we'll have to get, like I said, a little bit more creative with this one. Now, on the final turn, we have got, our final turn with these cards. We can either just play Iron Man, though, because it's not Nidavellir, because it's Mojo World, Iron Man isn't that strong. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to Psylocke onto Wong and Shuri onto Wong, and then Shang-Chi. But I don't actually like this order. We don't need to Shuri our Shang-Chi, because if my opponent plays a big card into Mojo World, we'll just be able to kill it with the Shang-Chi. We don't need a bigger Shang-Chi. So I'm going to leave my Shuri options open into the next turn. My opponent is actually going to wind up Shuriing right now, and they are Shuriing a Stature, which is a pretty cool play, and then we will give them Iron Man and nothing else here. Mindscape, not great for a Moon Knight deck potentially, but we'll make do here. So now we have a doubled up Shuri, and we can make an absolutely massive card. So going to wind up making a really big arrow here, and then there's another cool play that I can do. And I'm not sure if you've seen it, but we have the extra 2 energy this turn from the Psylocke that we wonged, which means I'm going to play Swarm into Luke's bar so that our Gambit is guaranteed to discard Wolverine, which has no other place to go, and then we'll have to go in Luke's bar. Gambit will also be able to kill one of my opponent's cards in Mojo World, most likely, or it will kill both of the cards in Mindscape, and either way, we'll be able to win one of those locations. So I thought this was just a really cool puzzle and a fun way to find a win. And I'll round out the video with this one. Again, I've got the Psylocke into Mr. Negative, so a pretty good curve, and I'll throw the Psylocke into location number 3, just in case that is Nidavellir. Obviously, I'm showing you guys like all of my highlighted games where everything goes exceptionally well. And like I said, if you don't get these exact draws, then just retreat, and the deck is pretty much that. You want to play a turn 3 Mr. Negative whenever you can. This one's another game with Luke's bar, which is kind of interesting, and I'm just going to play my Mr. Negative into Kunlun. I don't worry about playing that into Luke's bar because we've got Ironheart, which I'd rather just have Mr. Negative on the field, so that way it can get pumped up with Ironheart later. Now, unfortunately, my opponent has the Cosmo, so that is definitely going to slow us down here a little bit. We could have done some much more powerful things this game, but instead we are blocked a little bit. But we do still get to play Wong, and now we know that they can't Cosmo our Wong, and maybe we'll be able to do some fun things with that. We get to Wong Mystique, which is a combo that I haven't gotten to show off yet in this video, and is certainly a really, really powerful part of the deck. My opponent plays a Kang just to see that we are going to play Mystique, but they're not really going to be able to stop that in any capacity. They've already played their Cosmo, which means that we should be able to get away with this one here, even in the new timeline. And yeah, we are going to get a little bit of a crash here, a little bit of an error. Sometimes that happens with Kang, but we'll get right back into it. We will drop the Mystique into Wong yet again, and then we're setting up for a really, really big final turn. That's the important part. We won't be able to Shang-Chi my opponent, whatever they play in the Cosmo location, but we will still be able to potentially Gambit that card or do some other nice big stuff here. Remember, they do have a Shuri card that they are going to be playing next. So we can probably win this game with Gambit plus Wolfsbane. That is a ton of Gambit activations. I do decide to mix this up just a little bit though, and instead of playing Wolfsbane, I just play Ironheart. That gives me the chance to win in Luke's bar, even if we don't wind up taking over the Baxter building. And I think that this is just a little bit safer. My opponent's going to be dropping something huge with Shuri, and this will allow us to just win the Luke's bar location with more regularity here, and then maybe we can find the win with Gambit in some other capacity. So Ironheart is going to activate a bunch of times here. That's 2, this is 3, and then one more time, a 4th time. So Gambit also now gets to activate 4 times, and my opponent only had 5 cards. So we're going to leave my opponent with just Cosmo. They thought Cosmo was going to be enough to win this game. Well, just Cosmo isn't quite going to cut it. That's going to be it for me today, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I'm NoLucksGiven. Peace.